What's up, guys? I'm back. So I haven't did a video in a while. I've been busy. We opened a new gym up. Me and my partner did, and got a new gym. Got a lot of stuff going on. Right. Well, Justin Gaethje's fighting this weekend for the interim world title against Pimlet, and I wanted to do a video. And I've never really talked about the Gaethje fight on my YouTube channel, and I figured I would break it down and tell you what it was like fighting him. It obviously turned out bad for me. But just give you some of the details leading up to it and during the fight and stuff, right? Well, when I before I fought him, I obviously talked a lot of trash. I had to do what I had to do to promote the fight and to even get the fight to begin with. Leading up to that point, I was 9-1 in the UFC, one of the best records um, ever. Starting the first 10 fights of their career, hitting 9-1. I think me and only two other guys that did it. And I was, 6'3" for the weight class. A lot of people weren't trying to fight me, so I had to be a little bit vocal and started talking some trash and finally got my shot, And then, of course, it didn't work out, but you miss all the shots you don't take. And leading up to that fight, I was supposed to fight Paul Felder. I was scheduled to fight Paul Felder, and about 3 weeks before the Paul Felder fight, the Paul Felder fight was supposed to be in January, like maybe not January, in June, like June 24th or something. I believe that the fight for against Paul Felder was. So I'd already had a good 2 month camp for Paul Felder, and then I got called about 3 weeks before that fight to about 2.5 weeks before that fight to switch opponents and fight Justin Gaethje in a main event spot about 6 weeks after that. So I obviously took the opportunity and everything, and so I went home for about a week, and then I came back and went back to camp. And so it was a long camp. It was like 3.5 months. It was very long. I was a little burned out, but I was ready. I was ready to go. So leading up to the fight, switching opponents from Felder to Gaethje. They're both orthodox. Uh, Gaethje is more of a pressure fighter, more of a hands guy, throwing more hands, and Paul Felder's more of a Muay Thai style, long distance. Tall, a lot of kicks, a lot of front kicks, a lot of round kicks, more kicking arsenal than Gaethje. Um, and so leading up to this fight, the one thing when I got in there with Justin Gaethje, the one thing that I underestimated big time was, and this sounds dumb. This sounds dumb, but how athletic he was, how athletic and how fast twitch his muscles were. I very much underestimated that from through film study. I studied him. I watched his fights, and I just couldn't understand how athletic he was until I got in there with him. And that sounds dumb, right? Because you see what he's did now. But leading up to this point, he had lost to Poirier, and he had lost to Eddie Alvarez. And he if you went back and watched all of his fights in the PFL, he was getting hit a lot. He got hit a lot. So coming from a boxing background, and now keep in mind, I didn't start training until I was 20 years old. So all of these guys had just years of training on me. And, that's why it's rough looking back at some of my losses and stuff. But to this day, I've never lost to anybody that didn't have more training time than me. Everybody that I've ever lost to has been training for years more than me, right? And looking back on Gaethje's career before the UFC and watching his films, because he only had 2 or 3 fights in the UFC at the time I fought him, he got hit a lot. And coming from a boxing background, I started boxing when I was 20 and boxed for about 2.5 years, had about 22 amateur boxing fights in. From my boxing background, the small 2.5 year time period I had, the athletic people that are super athletic don't get hit a lot. The athletes in boxing are more defensive minded, and Gaethje wasn't defensive minded at all. He had no problem trading one for one. From watching him, in the World Series of Fighting and the previous organizations he was with before the UFC. So I didn't understand that from coming from a small boxing background of why someone so athletic would be willing to exchange and get hit. So just didn't understand how athletic he was till I got in there with him. So everything was good leading up to the fight. The press conference was good. I talked some shit. It went viral. Um, it backfired on me, but it was good trash talk, right? And sold the fight and everything. And then I get in there with them, and we're in there. Everything is good. We both walk out. The walkout was amazing. Everything was good, and I get in with them, and instantly when I got in there. I threw about eight. I think I threw like seven. I threw 8 or 9 strikes, I think, and I landed like 80% of it of what I threw. Like I landed like 8 out of 9 shots. Like all I thought in my mind when I was in there that first minute with him before I got caught is I'm about to hit this guy with anything I want to hit him with. Like I kicked him in the body. I landed multiple kicks. All I thought was I'm about to hit him with whatever I want to hit him with. But his first step was like crazy fucking fast. Um, the only other person I've ever trained with that that has explosion in their legs the way Justin Gaethje does was Johnny Hendricks. By far, Johnny Hendricks. Like I actually did a video about that. You know, a lot of people criticize Johnny Hendricks saying USADA, is the reason why his career fell apart or whatever. I just think he just stopped training hard and video about that. You know, a lot of people criticize Johnny Hendricks saying USADA, is the reason why his career fell apart or whatever. I just think he just stopped training hard and didn't train hard, in the last part of his career for sure. That was more of the issue. But Johnny Hendricks was by far the most athletic person I've ever trained with. If you're counting all around athleticism, like with wrestling, fast switch, like Johnny Hendricks could leap and hit you from, like you know how Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and these karate guys can close distance with these blitzes and all these different punches. Johnny Hendricks could be like 5 foot away from you and loop an overhand right and land it because he was so explosive with his first step and his legs, right? And Gaethje was the exact same way. Very explosive. Like his first step, he was like he had springs in his feet. And uh just super fast twitch, and I just didn't anticipate that until I got in there, and I landed a few shots, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna land whatever I want on him, and he kept coming, and he also led with he didn't, like I said, he didn't give a fuck about getting hit. He led with his head like a Mexican style boxer. So imagine like a Mexican style boxer that'll lead with their head, but it's like crazy athletic and fast switch. That's what I experienced in there, and then he kept jabbing to the he was trying to jab the body and look for the overhand, and I caught onto that pretty quickly and everything. And he tried it 2 or 3 times and it didn't work. So then I was circling. Oh, I knew he was trying to land his right hand. I was circling away from the power, to the right side, and got backed up on the cage. And he froze me with the left hook and slept me with the overhand rights. And it was very depressing, very depressing. And I woke up and I was, and didn't know what happened. And then went back and you watched the film and pieced stuff together and everything. And but yeah, guys, Gaethje by far is the most athletic fighter I've ever fought for sure. Another person that was very athletic that I fought was in the UFC was Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews was very athletic as well, very fast switching athletic as well. But Gaethje with the power and the athleticism combined, like it was crazy. It was crazy for sure. Didn't anticipate that, misjudged that on the film study. And honestly, even if I would have known and wouldn't have misjudged, I don't know if it would have mattered. He was just he hit too hard, and he was so fast, so much more fast, and so much more athletic than me. And so yeah, it was rough. So that was my assessment of the fight. And afterwards, we stayed in the hotel, and he was having an after party there. I went up, talked to him, we were cool and everything, and told him, so I was sorry for talking trash, and he was like, yeah, I respect you, I understand, no big deal, and we were cool and everything. And I haven't really spoke to him or saw him much since then, but he's fighting this weekend for the world title, and hopefully he gets the win. It would be cool to see him be the world champion. It would be super cool. Patty's a tough fight. I don't think this is going to the ground. Unless the only way it's going to the ground is if Justin was like to get in a combination where he slips and falls or something, and gets taken down, like either slips and falls and gets Patty lands on top or takes his back, like similar to how Charles Oliveira did. But it's going to be a stand up fight, and we'll see. Gaethje's getting a little older, Patty's a little younger, but hopefully Gaethje gets the win. It would be cool to see him be able to become a world champion. And yeah, that's why I figured I'd make the video. So any other subjects you'd like me to break down, just leave a comment below.